It might be.
So beer drinking CFB enthusiasts in the chat. I think Michigan has changed the way they recruit. They go after their guys, not chasing five. And look, when they get the 5 stars, they hit. Donovan Edwards, you can say he didn't hit this season, but he sure as hell hit in the national title game.
Will
JJ
Johnson?
McCarthy, he hit. Will Johnson, he hit. Like, they're getting those guys too.
Right. They get the 5 stars. And look, they offer these other kids too. So part of it is, I understand that they do recruit a little bit differently. Jim Harbaugh has definitely, in the last couple of years, prioritized guys that would be culture fits, especially since he's gotten this culture really up and running, over, maybe the 5-star. But they're still offering the 5 stars. They're still going out and evaluating and trying to get in the door there with those kids too. So they do have to be better recruiting. I will say that, but I don't think it's fully that reason. There are other reasons as well. And that's kind of where they're at, I think.
Yeah, it's a very interesting mix. And the way you build a roster now to create a championship team has changed. It just has changed in the last 3 years. And I don't think anybody knows exactly how to do it right. I think probably the surest way is do what Georgia does and just stack 5-star offensive and defensive linemen. But not everybody can do that. And Michigan just went 15-0 without ever having done that. And so I think that piece of criticism is a bit unfair. But I also think Jim Harbaugh might be the only coach who could pull this off.
No, I agree with that. Like the aspect of it that I mentioned with, he's the only one that would be doing this, because like other guys would probably love to have the option to talk to the Chargers this week. But so he has that opportunity. But with that comes a little bit of a curse, in that there's a lot of, a little bit of instability every January, it feels like at this point, that sort of thing. But also you have the benefit of having a coach good enough to piece things together. And he operates well in chaos. I mean, he almost likes things to be uncomfortable, and has somehow been able to kind of pull through even in those situations. So, and honestly, the last couple of years, once he has come back, whether it was after the Minnesota trip, for that interview with the Vikings, or last year with a couple meetings with Denver, they actually came here to Ann Arbor. Once that's over and spring ball starts on Valentine's Day, because they love football, which is the most Jim Harbaugh thing ever, then he's so locked in, and they just run such a smooth operation, it feels like, from that point on. And then maybe you take a week, you celebrate, you have a parade, and then the uncertainty starts again. But if he's back, I have no doubt that things are going to be probably pretty smooth come Valentine's Day.
Clayton's up there in Ann Arbor. I know everybody's excited about Michigan just winning a national title, but they're also excited about those Detroit Lions who just won a playoff game last night. Clayton's already in the studio. He's fist pumping already. If you would like to go see the Lions play against whoever wins this Bucs-Eagles game next weekend, well, you can get tickets on Game Time, because Game Time is the easiest way to get last-minute tickets. You download that Game Time app, use the code Staples, you get $20 off your first purchase. So that one's a hot ticket, obviously. Now, if you're looking for something a little more reasonably priced, let's say you're in Austin this weekend and you want to see Texas and Baylor playing basketball at Texas, one of the last meetings between these two programs as conference foes, and Baylor's really good again this year. Well, you can get a ticket to the game. Very easy. You look at the picture, it shows you where your seat would be. You turn your phone, it shows you what your vantage point actually looks like in the stadium or in the arena. And a couple more taps, the ticket's yours. So sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, you name it, Game Time's got it. The easiest way to get last-minute tickets. Download that Game Time app, redeem the code Staples, and get $20 off your first purchase. Yeah, I would think so also. Let's talk about if he leaves, because he did interview an NFL team today. If he leaves, is it Sherrone Moore, or do they look outside?
I think it's Sherrone Moore. I mean, I think probably you do both, but very quickly. I would say very, very quickly, and it probably ends up with Sherrone Moore. And also, I think if you looked around, too, nationally, you may come to the conclusion that Sherrone Moore is your best bet anyway, because of the advantages he has of already being on staff, having a relationship with these guys. He's a rising star that knows Michigan. He's a Michigan man now. Jim Harbaugh nominated him as a Michigan man. I don't know if he's confirmed or not yet, but I would confirm him if I have any sort of power as a,
I think the Ohio State game confirmed him as a Michigan man.
100%.
But it's interesting
100%.
though, and I know Michigan fans don't want to hear this comparison, but it is similar to the situation. Remember, Ryan Day had to be Ohio State's interim coach for 3 games in 2018, which allowed Gene Smith to get a look at him and see how he ran the program. And then Gene Smith said that he vetted some other candidates. He looked at some other people, but ultimately decided that Ryan Day would be the best successor for Urban Meyer. Like he had a little bit of time to do that. So I imagine Warde Manuel is probably has already done that and probably has an idea what he wants.
And it's weird too, because you didn't expect this to happen. So Andy, you and I were there for, all the press conferences in Houston, and everyone was asking Jim Harbaugh up there, even with Kalen DeBoer the day before the game, about his future. Turns out Kalen DeBoer, less than a week later, was gone.
Yes.
So,
it's wild. Think about this, Clayton. Exactly a week ago, right now, they were in the first quarter of the national title game coaching against one another. Now, one of them coaches Alabama and the other one interviewed with the Chargers.
There's a graphic saying that he interviewed with the Chargers. Yeah, and the other one is wearing crimson. And it has long had his press conference 2 days ago now.
Yes.
Already. So time moves fast. But I bring that up to say this, that if there was a name that I think Michigan fans at least would want to look at externally, it would have been Kalen DeBoer. I mean, he's a guy who's down the street at Eastern Michigan for a few years at one point, obviously has Midwest ties, and is a great coach, an up-and-comer, somebody that was at Indiana. And Michigan fans kind of got to know him then when he was the offensive coordinator. So he was a guy, even the name Jed Fish is thrown out there. Well, now he has a new job. So even more so over the last week, I would say it's solidified that it's Sherrone. I'm not saying it wasn't going to be already, but the options are, Nick Saban kind of threw in a wrench in this whole thing.
Yeah. Little guy Trader in the chat says, my heart says Sherrone Moore, but my head says Jesse Minter. I would imagine if Jim Harbaugh leaves that Jesse Minter is Jim Harbaugh's defensive coordinator at the Chargers or wherever.
That's what I would guess as well. Yeah. And I think he probably goes back to the NFL at some point. And I think Sherrone Moore is, I just don't think it would be Jesse Minter. I think Sherrone Moore is kind of a little bit more groomed at this point to be the head coach.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if that happens, because I also think that Sherrone is the obvious choice, that they really don't have to overthink this. And Wrexham FC Boston in the chat says Jesse Minter feels way more critical to our success than Sherrone. Hard disagree, because I've watched that offensive line play for the last 3 years, and I would say that's the most important element to Michigan's success. And guess who's directly responsible for that?
Yeah, Sherrone Moore, and then he's taken over the offense too. I will say the two changes, so it's kind of hard to figure out which one, was more important. But I do agree with you. But they switch the defensive system. They bring in Mike McDonald from the Ravens. Yep. Now they're running this NFL style system. The same year
I call it the Ravens internship system.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like you get to. It's almost like the Sherrone Moore test driving the car there for a few games. It's like, Mike McDonald got to test drive, or John Harbaugh got to watch him.
We don't need Wink Martindale anymore. Come on, Mike.
Right. And he's done a great job, and he's interviewing for head coaching jobs, and they're the 1 seed. So they're going to have a great opportunity here to win a Super Bowl. But at the same time, you promoted Sherrone Moore to offensive line coach. You made that change on the defense. Those were the two biggest decisions I think Jim Harbaugh's made at Michigan. You can't go wrong either way. And Minter was incredible this year in year 2 of the defense, and what he did to Michael Penix in Washington was amazing. But I agree. It's Sherrone Moore. He's the second longest tenured coach on staff now, and kind of that protege of Jim Harbaugh.
So I'm going to break Malachi's heart in the chat again. He wants Joe Brady as Michigan's OC. If you just watch the Bills play, Joe Brady's going to be fine in the NFL for a little while. He's got a job there, and he may have a lot of NFL teams after him as play caller after this, because he's essentially the interim, because he replaced Ken Dorsey. So yeah, this is I don't think you're gonna get Joe Brady. Also, Sherrone Moore might be a play calling head coach. Who knows?
He could be.
We just saw him do it.
Right. He did do it against Ohio State in the biggest game of his life. And obviously everyone knows how big that game was with everything that went on. But here's the thing, though. I think the one concern you would have with Sherrone Moore, not just him specifically, but any guy who is an internal, hire who's been here for a while. So a lot of his network is here at Michigan. I know he does, obviously knows other people in the business, but he's been here for a while. He's an internal hire, and he's a first-time head coach. It's a little bit different when an assistant coach signs up to work for Jim Harbaugh than it would be for a first-time head coach. Now, he could retain a lot of the staff, but I do think if you're thinking next steps, and we got a lot of time to talk about this if things happen, but that would be kind of one drawback, I think, is hiring your staff. But at the same time, maybe, the continuity you would keep with him.
Let me throw this out there. I'm assuming Jim wants Sherrone to get the job if Jim leaves.
I think so.
If that happens, I think the John Harbaugh internship program stays open, and I think the Jim Harbaugh internship program comes open. And so you may be getting some whiz kids sent your way, just like Jim's been doing with John's whiz kids these last few years.
Point. That's a great point too. And there's an advantage too with Sherrone Moore on that. And no, it's a great point. So, but it's something to think about because you do, I think that one of the biggest things Michigan has done the last few years is they've built one of, if not the best staffs, like 1 through 11, head coach to 10th assistant in the country. So you can't do it alone if you're a head coach, but you make a great point there too. Maybe the internship system is, just incredible that they have the ability to do that. And you have two brothers at the top of the game like this.
Well, and it's unbelievable because that Ravens system is so good. And now you've got it kind of laid out. You've laid out the groundwork. So whoever the next hot up and coming assistant is with the Ravens is a good position coach. You just send him over, call the plays, and then he's ready to rock and roll in case Mike Macdonald, because Mike Macdonald's been interviewing for head coaching jobs. So
right.
Like Jesse Minter may be the Ravens defensive coordinator for all we know.
Or he may be Mike Macdonald's defensive coordinator.
Correct. So that's the part you gotta think about. So you want to keep that pipeline open. Before we let you go, Clayton, I do want to ask you about the roster because quite a few announcements went down. Donovan Edwards coming back. That feels pretty big.
That is big. I know he didn't have the year that everyone expected him to have, and he didn't revolutionize the position like he said he might. But at the same time, this dude came back and probably thought Blake Corum was going to be the NFL this year. I think things just didn't work out as well as he would have liked them this year. And he was coming off 2 pretty serious injuries that required surgery last offseason. So I think a healthy offseason for him is going to be big. This is an offense that we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. It could be a younger guy. It could be an Alex Orji or Jaden Davis, the freshman. And I think they're going to have to rely more on the run game or as much as they have. And it's huge to have depth there. So now you have Donovan Edwards, Kalel Mullings, who we saw play pretty well this year at different points, a top 100 guy in Jordan Marshall out of Ohio that's coming in. So they have depth in other guys I'm not naming, but they have depth there at running back. That's big. Rod Moore comes back on defense at the safety spot along with Makari Page. Those are really big ones. Josiah Stewart at the edge spot. So there's a lot of talent on that defense, some uncertainty on the offense that I think they'll be able to piece together. And I think Michigan may be, depending on how everything shakes out here, they may be one of the more active top-tier teams in the transfer portal in the spring. Yeah. Just because, you didn't know what some of these guys were going to do. But, a lot of guys that would have just come back on a COVID year, a lot of guys that have played 4 or 5 years of college football have moved on, including 6 offensive linemen, which is crazy. But
including Trente Jones. And that was one of those when he did. I feel selfish saying this and stupid because, have your moment, everybody. But I've seen a lot of guys who were out of eligibility. They sent out the graphic declaring for the draft. I'm like, wait a second. Did they have eligibility left?
And then it makes us go back and research and do,
But Trente Jones actually did have 1 more year left.
Yes.
So he is foregoing a year to go. This is the guy who got plugged in at right tackle after the Zach Zinner injury and Carson Barnhart got kicked down to guard.
Yes. And so he is a guy who's not been a full-time starter for an entire season. Began last year as the starter at right tackle, got hurt, and then got overtaken by Carson Barnhart. And then this year only started the last 3 games, but has done well when he's been in there. He also posted this, though, Andy, I think the day before he made his decision. I think it might have been off topic, but it might have been kind of a precursor. He pointed out that he's 23 years old. At some point, these guys weren't planning on having that COVID year.
He's class in 2019. He spent 5 years in college.
For sure. So I think that's part of it. And those are mainly the guys that have left Michigan at this point. Like Drake Nugent had the same thing, but Trevor Keegan actually could have come back, and Zinter, but those guys were already on. They came back for one more year last year, so those were expected. And same with Roman Wilson, the Senior Bowl type of guys. But yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be a new look offense. No clue who the quarterback's going to be. It might be a Ravens type of offense with Alex Orji in there. But the defense is going to be pretty loaded again. So,
well, now we got to figure out who's coaching them. So,
well, that too. Yeah.
Clayton, thank you so much. We will be back in touch very soon, I'm sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.